Hey, Steve.
Hey, Jim.
So if the price of vinyl is indeed coming down, you know what that does mean?
No, what?
We can just buy more records.
Awesome!
Welcome once again to a new episode of Two Guys Talking About Records, a Vinyl Community podcast.
I'm Steve, a record collector.
And I'm Jim, and I'm a record store owner, but I do collect records too.
He does, and I've seen it. There's a lot.
We have got an interesting subject coming up today. Kind of a follow-up to one of your Sunday videos, or was it a midweek?
It was a midweek. Yeah, Tuesday. I threw an extra one in.
On your channel, surmising that maybe, just maybe, the price of vinyl is coming down.
I think there's instances out there where it's showing that there might be a lot of records just sitting out there.
Well, we will get to that subject in mere moments after we do our weekly duty of checking to see what we got. But I also do have a legitimate shout out.
Okay.
Today. Check this out. Does this mean I've made the big time when I get a mix CD from DJ Trish?
Yes, it does. She is wonderful. I love DJ Trish.
Well, I want to say a big thank you to DJ Trish. She sent me some mix CDs that we got to listen to and a little note saying that she enjoys listening to us and sent some stickers along as well. And want to thank you again for that. These are kind of very unique, aren't they?
DJ Trish has the most eclectic group of music I've ever seen. She's into the world music, she's into everything, and she is just one of the nicest ladies. I've known her since I've been in the VC.
Well, great, very much. Thank you again, DJ Trish, and I think we'll probably at least send out, I don't do CDs, but I will send out a sticker or two. How's that?
All right, yes.
So how was your week, collectability-wise? It's a big one, I think.
Well, you know, it's how a drunk can fall off the wagon and suddenly just hit the bar. I've been really trying to keep my vinyl purchases under control. Well, I fell off the wagon something fierce, and I can't even go through everything I got. But I'll go through a few of them.
Okay, good luck.
It's been bad, real
Hi,
bad.
I'm Steve. Hi, Steve.
Yes, that's right. I'm a vinyl addict. Oh, my God. Well, I did find, I was in a store, and there was Aphrodite's Child 666. Now, just that name just gives me the heebie-jeebies. This was in 72, but it's a vertical swirl album, and people talk about it all the time, this album. I just wanted a vertical swirl album, so I just paid the price because I wanted the label.
Now, if you're unfamiliar with what that is, the Vertigo is a record label, and the Swirl was a very early version of the labels. I think there's a Black Sabbath out there that has the Vertigo Swirl.
Yes.
And I'm a little lost as to who else might be on
there.
There
Are other ones I hear, but generally they're UK. You got to go.
Yep.
They're all UK pressings,
Yep.
and it's really cool to look at. You could just sit there and stare at it and get sucked into the vortex of this. So
you were so excited about this, you texted me.
Yes, I was, and so now I have some kind of satanic music or something.
Just don't play it backwards because not only will the swirl go the other way, you'll open up a portal.
Oh, man, I think you got something there. I did find Miles Davis, Egg Harta. It came out in 76, kind of a jazz, during his fusion jazz rock. This was one of his last, more of the harder rock ones he did. And I mean, he was really into the drugs big time. He wasn't leaving his house or anything, and he was in real bad shape. But, they made this album, and it's very, very good, and I'm excited about that. ABC's Lexicon of Love, just because I think it's their best they have. Ben Folds put out a brand new album, What Matters Most.
Yep, I've heard a couple clips. It's okay.
It is. It's okay. It's not his best. I think his best still come in the early aughts, but I liked it. He's been doing classical music for 10 years, and so he brings in some of that to the album.
You even got in on that early pre-order with an autographed cover. We had somebody pre-order one from us that came with the autograph, and I'm like, oh, man.
Yes. Yeah, it was neat. I went right to to his record label, and I was able to get that. And then there was the 3D Invisibles.
Oh, yeah.
Vampire A Go-Go.
They are fun.
Yes, out of Royal Oak, Michigan from 88. Psychobilly Garage Rock. And just, there it was. I'm just, what the heck is this?
I've got a couple of their albums, and they actually did send a couple of their albums out with 3D glasses, and the covers are in that old style 3D.
Oh, neat. The Cramps had done that. Yep. Wow. So, well, this one didn't have that, and I was unfamiliar with them, but I thought, well, let's just give it a shot because I'd fallen off the wagon. So did it really didn't matter? No, it's just I was belly up to the record bar there and just buying away.
If you were a semi-truck, you'd be hitting the runaway lane.
Yes, and there was much on there. Final one I'll just mention was Tokyo Sex Destruction. I was listening to some channel and it's like, oh, all right, it's kind of a noise, shall we say, noise rock, and garage rock from 2004. Actually, it's called Black Noise is the New Sound. Different.
Okay.
But I liked it.
That's a busy week, and I've got some bad news.
Yeah.
You still have a pile waiting here.
I know.
Oh, man. Well, good luck to you.
Yeah.
My week was quiet.
Oh.
In comparison, I only added 2 to the personal collection. One was kind of a neat one. I think we talked last week about me finding this hidden box of gems that got tucked under a table, and there's a couple of holy crappers in there.
Yeah.
But one of them, not a holy crapper, but a fun one for me, was from the Flamin' Groovies in an album called Now from 1978. Mm-hmm. And I'm familiar with them. I didn't have any Flamin' Groovies in the collection, but I do have a few on my my iPod, iPhone, whatever in this case. So what intrigued me about this is it had not a radio station promotional sticker on it, but a record store promotional saying that we're providing this to you for promotional use, that you play it in your store in hopes that you enjoy it and want to carry it.
Okay.
So I thought that was really kind of cool. I'll hold on to this one. It's got a lot of neat stuff on it, but several covers, including covers from the Beatles and the Stones and some older, like a ragtime cover done by the Flamin' Groovies on there as well. Blues as well. It's really kind of a neat one as well as new originals, but it was produced by Dave Edmunds.
Okay, so you have that fun, Ms. Edmunds, was, especially during that time.
Yep.
Edmunds was really
late
going.
70s, 80s. The other one they added to the collection was a new release from the Dead Milkmen, their brand new one called Quaker City Quiet Pills. You know I'm a Dead Milkmen fan from way back. I used to get their newsletter back when newsletters were the thing that bands did to connect with fans in the mid-'80s. I was on their mailing list for the longest time. I saved those too. So jury's still out for me. This is the Dead Milkmen. It sounds exactly like the Dead Milkmen, like they did as far as I remember them. And for some reason, it's just not sitting with me yet. I may have to listen to it several more times, but I might get there. We'll see. Did you listen to it?
I did. I listened to it. It didn't hit me either. They weren't breaking any new ground.
There we go.
And so it was, and I forgot to bring that back.
That's all right. So not a busy week, but we'll look forward to next week where we can kick into gear a little bit better, and I'll continue to formulate my opinion on the new Milkmen album and see where it takes me.
When you get it back.
The coolest thing about the new Dead Milkmen album, though, and well, there's lots of cool things because it's the Dead Milkmen, but it was the list price for a brand new album. This thing listed for $23, $24 out the door list, which is unique, I think, for a new release, especially for an older band that's established, to see a list price down that low. So you have an opinion, and I think I'd like to preface this by saying that this is anything we're talking about here with the price of vinyl is merely based on anecdotal evidence. I looked for some articles talking that maybe either industry-wise or opinion-wise showing that the price of vinyl is coming down, and all I could find were articles from January saying that this is going to be the biggest and the price increases are going to be bigger than ever. Just as soon as January they were still saying this. But you think this is going the other direction in some cases.
Just when you look, I get a lot of emails from record places. I was counting how many emails I get from record companies, and there's over 20 of them.
Wow.
And you Yeah, it's really bad, especially when you're trying to limit the amount of vinyl that you're buying. This is not the way to go. It's like I'm doing everything possible to spend more money. But I have seen more sales happening. In any retailer, we do sales. I mean, sales is just a part of what you do. You get excitement. It's, some of these cases, it's 70, 70 up to 75% off. There is some incredible deals. Some of this was highly collectible, really expensive items, but they still have it left over. One of the things I noticed was that George Harrison box set. It came in a wooden crate.
Yep. Oh, yes.
$1,200 or something like that. Now it's down to $800. They have it left over, and you could see some of these $100 expensive pressings that have been putting out, lowering the price. It's not moving out as fast, and I think a lot of it is, you're trying to anticipate what people are going to buy.
Yep.
And I mean, let's face it, making a record's a gamble. Deciding what to press is a big gamble. I mean, it's Las Vegas. I'm amazed. It has to be on a betting app. You would think on a betting app. I think that the new Dead Milkman's going to sell this many. What are the odds? And you could bet on this stuff. So with, the excitement around vinyl and everybody, you read everything, it's growing. This is what people are buying. They're spending this much money. What record companies, of course, are going to gamble. And they're going to gamble bigger, I think, than less, and try to put out a little bit more. And now they're finding there's so much out there, and there's only so much money. And with the prices going up, you're going to have leftover.
I will agree with that, absolutely. In fact, I see this from the retail side, especially with regards to the prices that we're seeing on our distributor sites. Again, we're a small enough store, I cannot buy directly from the labels. You have to get just an ungodly amount of every, per month to be eligible to buy directly from labels. So we have to go through what are called one-stops, i.e. a middle organization that buys directly from the labels and then wholesales them out to smaller record stores in smaller amounts. There's no way that I'm going to sell, 75 copies of a particular record, no matter whether it's Taylor Swift or otherwise. I mean, maybe in the long run we could. But the thing that you mentioned about it being a gamble, even on our end, on the store side, it is there too. How many of this do I order? I'm going through that right now. We had a couple of big pre-order announcements just this week. I mentioned Taylor Swift, one for a new Taylor's version, triple LP purple vinyl, to indie stores of, I think, or Speak Now, and the new Greta Van Fleet, which is coming out. Two very different artists, but two very, very big draws with very big loyal audiences. Right now, if I'm keeping score, because we're a mid-Michigan store, the Greta Van Fleet is outpacing Taylor Swift on pre-orders. But the thing is that when I put my pre-orders in ahead of time to try to get a little bit of a better deal, I make that guess. So my guess was, okay, I'm going to order 5 Taylor Swift and 10 of the Greta Van Fleet. I upped that Greta Van Fleet when they announced a different vinyl variant to 10 and 10, so 20 total. Wow. And promptly, I have 10, 11 pre-orders for that one on Greta Van Fleet and 6 pre-orders for the Taylor Swift. So that means I'm already hoping that I get just that amount to cover the pre-orders, and my gamble was a little bit low in this case.
Yeah. And I was looking at, some of the stuff that's been going on clearance, and just, I'm going to throw out a few here. At the beginning of the year, ABBA put out Voyager, that brand new album. Yeah. In the original list, they had $25. Now it's down to $15. They're trying to move that sucker out. Red Hot Chili Peppers, Unlimited Love. Originally, they'd asked for $35. I found it dropped down to $20. Turtles, Turtle Soup. And these are the ones that just crack me up. So Turtles, Turtle Soup, you could find bargain bin. You can find it very inexpensive. But no, they release one that's $30. Now it's down to $15 as they're trying to move this out. I can still get it for $5-6 in good condition, but it's just we're trying to, and some people want that new music. I think we had discussed before that, you can buy a new album and chances are it's going to sound better than that original just because it hasn't been played a lot, and it does make a difference. But when it's still a price where I got a bargain bin album or I can spend $30 on it, doesn't make sense.
This is where I think the labels, it's mystifying sometimes when I see the lists of upcoming releases and I look at an album that regularly sits in our $1 room or has a $2 price tag on it, like a Judy Collins or something like that. I don't remember the last time I sold a Judy Collins. It might have been to you. I'm trying to remember exactly. But and then here comes down the pipe of Wildflowers for $30. It's like, why? Especially when there's so many of these other ones out there. Another great example, a couple of years ago, they reissued Alice Cooper's School's Out. And this was kind of a big deal because they had included the panties inside of it, as was with the original release that was discontinued. The original release, Alice Cooper's with the panties in good condition, can fetch triple digits in the aftermarket, the stuff, the early pressings. So whether or not this was going to drive that price down when they reissued it, who knows? I haven't checked lately on that. But I took a gamble on that and ordered a bunch of those, and I still have 2 or 3 left of this reissue from a couple of years back, simply because I thought maybe people would want to get in on it for the collectability, and they didn't. On the heels of this, though, with me still having a couple copies of that year-old reissue of School's Out, last week, it was just last week, they reissued 2 other Alice Coopers, including another edition of School's Out with the panties, but this one included a second LP of outtakes and other things, which is kind of a new trend that they're doing a lot. But here's the kicker. This sucker listed at $80 for a double LP. I put it out there for pre-orders. Nobody bid. I did not want to bring one of those into the store, still sitting on other ones, because, man, $80 is a big chunk of money to spend on an album that in used condition or a mid-'80s reissue is maybe $5 to $10.
Yeah, there was one that's coming out now. It's Getz and Gilberto, the one that has Girl from Ipanema on there. It is coming out in 45 RPM, but they want $60 for this. You can find, there's like a billion of them out there that don't, and it doesn't cost very much whatsoever. But now we're going to ask for $60. Or I just saw Elvis Aloha from Hawaii, $42. It's go to a flea market. You're going to find it. Now, this will be brand new, and maybe they're adding a couple extra special things in there. But we're trying to get that nostalgia market, I think, and they're really going after this. But it's just, again, if you're just going to spend that much money, then you're going to cut back on a whole bunch of other stuff.
Well, we can't fault the labels for trying to capitalize on the demand. We've talked about this before. If the demand was not there, we wouldn't be getting these. People are buying them. Someone is buying them, but apparently not enough people are buying them, because then we'll be looking at this Alice Cooper double LP that was $80, probably in the $40 range in 6-7 months.
I did this. I looked at one of the albums that was recent released a year or so ago that it was, everyone was talking about it, all kinds of hubbub and stuff. It was the Paul McCartney 3.
Yep.
So if those are listening, please make sure you're sitting down, because I'm going to go through some variants that were available in the U.S. Now, 53 total variants were made for the world. Some of them were CD, but in the U.S. you could buy, and these are limited, blue. You could buy the green dice. There was black, which they were asking $39 for. There was red limit. There was a red limited edition. They did 6,200 of that. Actually, this was now in Discogs. You can find it. The medium price is $57, but people are trying to sell that for $39. There was the white limited edition. Limited edition. They made 11,000 of them, by the way. Discogs medium, $43. You can find it for as low as $15 on Discogs. Green Target version. There's the orange that they did 3,000. They're $50 on Discogs medium. You can get it for $34. That's what people are selling it for. There's blue. There's the blue Barnes & Noble. There's the pink. There's the yellow. There's Violent Translucent. There's yellow with black dots. That's a third man release. They only made 333 of them. Get this, medium, $2,000.
Wow.
You can buy it for $1,200 from someone else trying to sell it, but it's still $1,200, but $2,000. There's Coke bottle. There's white swirl. There's red. That was from Third Man. They did 3,000 of them. Medium was 111 in Discogs. Someone's selling it for 50. Yellow secret. I can't even read what I wrote on there. That's just available. These are all the limited editions available in the U.S. When you add them all up, it's not limited whatsoever. There's just a billion of them out there. But how many other releases are they doing this to?
A lot. Trust me. I see this a lot. The Queens of the Stone Age has got a new one coming out next week. There are 5 different color variants of a double LP, and they all range in that $40 to $50 range.
And this is going to create, to me, this excess that eventually you have to get rid of. I mean, it's just common practice, and this is what I talked about on when I did that thing on YouTube. Is just the fact that you have to have cash, and you tie up all of your money within all these variants or whatever. And if they don't sell, well, guess what? I need to get money so I can pay for the next batch.
Yep.
I got to move something out. We got to start clearing it out. And you have those some of these places are warehouses and distributors where they, will buy in the excess and, sell it for low. That's Merch Bar. I think that's one of them. Obviously the record labels are doing some of this, and then record stores.
A couple more points on the McCartney release in particular. When that came out, it was difficult for small indie stores to get a hold of. For whatever reason, they rationed this. And I've seen this a couple of times before. It happened, oddly enough, with the Greta Van Fleet release, the last big one, and with the Taylor Swift before, too, where right before the release date, we're told, oh, we can't send you all that you needed, whether they're holding some back to try to cover demand. And then after the initial excitement of the buy, the release date comes out, 2, 3 weeks, 4 weeks down the line, oh, here's the ones you wanted. It's like, well, nobody wants it anymore because they've already gotten that. But the McCartney one especially, I do remember that. We couldn't get a hold of it, and we had people asking for it. So they had to go look elsewhere. But now, all of a sudden, it's everywhere.
Generally, when you look at Discogs and you're going to buy something from Discogs, you have that medium price. Almost all the time you see the sellers are selling it above that medium price.
Yep.
This was a case where I didn't find anybody trying to sell it above medium price. Every one of them that I looked at, they were going below the price because they tried to move it out. And I think to your point with Record Store Day and stuff, talk about what you've been seeing on Record Store Day.
The Record Store Day stuff, I think the more well-known artists and the more rare the pressing, the smaller the pressing, those are the ones that are holding their value. But we had a copy of the Grateful Dead Record Store Day from this past April. It's a Live in Boston one box set. Retails for $125. We're keeping it on there. We had one in the store still. It was nobody picked it up yet, so I'm putting it back out. And I decided to list it up on Discogs. I had to put our list price, our store price on it, and mark it up by $10 to cover that Discogs fee increase that we talked about. And I'm way in the upper end just to cover my costs on it. There are box sets, new and sealed, of this for sale on Discogs in the $50 to $60 range. Which is, that's going to hurt me in the long run because why would somebody want to buy it there when they can get it there cheaper?
Yeah, it's some flippers really got burnt.
Yes, basically.
Going in, bringing it up and finding out, well, they sure made a lot of them, or demand wasn't quite as much. You do have those that I have to have this each and every time. And now, too often, when I listen to videos, people talking about Record Store Day, they don't go to it. They just wait and go on to Discogs. Now, there's some real bogus ones on there, and you see that too, or the ratings are, they'll just tell you, this is not a real seller, it's a scam. But, that's interesting how much all that dropped. Wow. The other thing I look at is, there's certain niche markets, and you think of jazz. Mm-hmm. And again, you can watch YouTube channels, and you'll see a billion. You would think jazz is the biggest thing out there. There's so many people, they talk about jazz, and for the longest time, Blue Note was it. But now you have Impulses doing them, Verbs doing them. There's every kind of jazz label is putting out their own special, higher priced ones. Whereas if you like jazz, there's no way you can afford them all. So you have this flood of more records coming in. Obviously, Blue Note's look and go, well, this stinks because it has to hurt their sales. And that's where I've been buying these Blue Notes, on clearance. And I found it as low as there was a $35 album that it was being sold for $12. It just didn't go. There's so much out there. We're taking a niche market and we've totally flooded it.
I think we're going to see this. A couple of weeks back, we talked about the high fidelity stuff with the MoFi controversy, but you mentioned that Rhino's getting in on the game.
Mm-hmm.
And these things are high priced, again, for albums that most everybody already owns. You think this is going to happen down the line with that we're being oversaturated with not only jazz in the niche markets, but the high fidelity. Everybody's getting in on this game too, and that's going to flood this even more.
It is. I just, for those listening, how much money do you have? Are you getting a pay raise to go buy more? You just can't afford to keep doing it because all of those have gone up so high. And that's where, as we talked about a few weeks ago, I've totally backed off of that market because it's limiting my purchase of new. We got a lot of new vinyl coming out, so why go back and buy something, maybe from years ago? Yeah, it might sound great, but do I want to pay $150 when I got brand new music that I've never heard coming out?
This is another point that's, I think, worth making. The new artists trying to break through and sell copies of their vinyl. It's a very profitable thing for the artists. They don't get a lot in streaming, so they need some physical sales to help boost what they do and get their paychecks. What I'm seeing on the side of a buyer to a reseller, the wholesale stuff we buy, is that, and this again, just anecdotal on my part, the cost of some new releases is going down. So we had a big one from Wet Leg last year. Mm-hmm. A really neat band. They're taking off like a rocket. And their vinyl was tremendously modestly priced in the $24, $25 range. And that's because they're trying to get some sort of a toehold. Now, the price increase that everybody talked about last year, there was big news that UMG was increasing their prices. What I have found on the side of buying wholesale and, marking up what we mark it up, which is really on our side only about $3 or $4, not much. The higher priced albums are the ones that are taking the most advantage of people getting into this. Nirvana's Nevermind hit $30. Pretty much any Beatles reissue, $30, where a while ago they were $22, $23. Whereas these new releases, and this one boggled me a little bit, the Dead Milkmen release that we talked about earlier, I joked that it is listing at $23, $24, and it's a limited edition of 500. And then there's a black vinyl version, which is about the same. So those list prices are down. And I don't know what the thought process is on that other than we're going to go with the safe bet. And we know people are always going to buy a Nirvana. We know people are always going to buy AC/DC's Back in Black. We know people are always going to buy Abbey Road from the Beatles. So there is where we're going to make our money. These are going to be $30 across the board, maybe more, $35 in some cases. And then these new ones, well, we'll just mark them down to $22, $23 and hope for the best.
And that's the gamble. And you are correct. And you think about, if I'm a record company, I own the rights or whoever, you've made all that money on those. I mean, those make so much more profit for a record company to do than something brand new. And to your point, it is a safe bet because people, no matter what, will keep buying that. I mean, look on Pink Floyd, how hard it is to get sometimes a Pink Floyd album just in one of the reissues.
Yep.
It's a safe bet, and they have a hard time sometimes keeping up with it.
They'll go for months. Wish You Were Here was notoriously on back order for probably about 9 months last year. Now, granted, the supply chain and the logistical issues that every industry has been going through played into that, but every time we'd get them, I'd have to order them by 5 or 6 at a time because I know that once that's sold, I would be another 6-7 months before I'd see them again.
And we still can't figure out who has them all in their collection. I mean, are there really that many vinyl collectors?
I want to take a quick side note on this because this is interesting. We come from an era where to discover music, you didn't have Spotify, you didn't have Apple Music, you didn't have YouTube. The way you discovered music was by hearing a clip on the radio or talking to friends who bought it or seeing it in the record store and being drawn in by a cover. I think that I want to be careful about this, but I think the way that new people to this industry discover music has changed. And because of that, they're less likely to jump on something. I've never heard of Wet Leg, so maybe I won't buy the vinyl. That's why the price is down there. Versus, oh yeah, I need to get that Nirvana album.
It makes perfect sense, and I can see that, the change that's happening. Yeah, myself, I'm still one where you show me a cool looking cover, and I'll tend to jump at it because that is how I've always shopped and looked at stuff. I do stream a little more now. I try to do that on different albums, but I just pull up a few samples, and if it hits my ears, that's great.
And I'd argue that people do that too. So maybe I'm wrong on the whole issue of they're not previewing the same way or learning about things the same way that we did, just a different way. But the attention span is also how long are you going to give a sound clip to see whether or not you're into it and deciding on whether you're going to spend your money on that album. 30 seconds, 40 seconds?
Yeah, about 30 seconds. I can, wow, I like that. And I just listen to one clip, I'll buy it, then again I go, oh, that was the only good song on the whole album. It's like a 70s album, one of those one-hit wonders.
That's another great subject to get into, is like you buy it for the one song and the rest of it you're like, what the heck am I doing here?
Some people have whole record collections totally devoted to that. I used to be one of them.
I want to go back to McCartney on this. We talked about the limited nature of some of the pressings, especially with that McCartney album from last year. I think he learned from the best. You recall the Beatles' White Album, correct? Yeah. Okay, early pressings of that were numbered. And theoretically, I'm using air quotes for those of you that can't see, theoretically limited. When in reality, and the label and the Beatles just kind of noted this as well, that they just started stamping numbers on the cover of the album, just sequentially. However many they pressed, they just stamp them on there. It was limited to several 100,000 copies. But that idea that this was limited, I've got a Beatles White Album that's numbered on the front. This is limited. I've got something special here. Well, yeah, you're special with a few 100,000 other people in this case.
And as people come to sell those to the record store for you to buy, they go, look, it's a limited edition. I mean, this is only 210,000,
Yeah. I mean, there is legitimately limited numbers. And I think that a lot of the labels that are doing these smaller runs, like a Vinyl Me Please or the Third Man stuff, those are where maybe that cost is a little more warranted. They're paying a lot for licensing for a certain artist or a certain album, knowing that they're going to do a high fidelity limited run of that. So they have to recoup that because they're not going to sell 200,000 copies of it. They're going to sell 500 to 1,000 copies of it. Music on vinyl is another one that does a lot of these, and they tend to be a little pricier. It's an import, but they do these legitimate limited runs.
Now you have Target has their limited, Barnes & Noble, they're limited, Walmart, they're limited. Every record stores now are doing, like Noble Records has gotten into it now where he's doing limited. We got 500 of this variation, 500 of this variation. And so it just, which limited is the limited? That's, if you buy because you want to do it as an investment for money, it's totally confusing. If you're buying it for just because of your love of music, then just buy whichever one you want and be done with it. But otherwise, it's all over the place. Like I read through that McCartney list. I mean, which one? Obviously the Third Man record, it seems like. But you can still buy it cheaper than what Discogs media prices.
You're always going to have the person, the rare collector that wants to be a completist. I mean, maybe it's an artist or a specific album that means that much to you that you want to have every single copy out there. And I know people like that, and that's cool. If you want to collect like that, more power to you. They're making it more difficult when there's 30 different variants, though.
They are painful. They're laying in the bed and they're cussing up a storm at night. God, they just released another variant of this.
Now, I see the big box variants kind of drifting away to the wayside of this. They're still going to do some of the bigger names. Walmart and Target are going to make a mint off the Taylor Swift stuff when they get it. I'm glad to some extent that they do include the smaller independent stores and give us their own variants of that album, because that gives people a chance to support the artist and support a local record store at the same time. And obviously the numbers for the indie stores are going to be far fewer than your big box variant style of that. But I don't see the big box stuff lasting in the long run on the wider scale. They're always going to have some big ones, but they are going to stick with what the record labels do to the staples. You're going to get your Beatles, you're going to get your AC/DC, Nirvana, the big names. They're always going to have those, whereas stores like ours can still manage to bring in some of the newer stuff and some of the more odder variants.
Yeah, a big box wants to be safe because they do have to turn investment. I mean, that's just, inventory turns is what it's all about for them. And if it's not going, there's someone up in that corporate office, this isn't selling. And you have seen at times where they do those big sales.
Oh, yeah.
Remember a couple of years ago, Barnes & Noble did 75% off everything? Yep. That was before the flood. Boy, did I buy that up and lose them all. But it was just crazy. They overbought. Vinyl's becoming big. We're going in big. And it's like, oh, it doesn't sell. Well, they were asking, they were trying to get too much money, asking too much for it.
Our Barnes & Noble here in Midland, Michigan at one point had a tremendously large area. Now it's relegated to a shelf the size of maybe one of ours, and the stuff is just crammed in there without a second thought. Now, they're drifting away from that, in my opinion. That's really the natural progression of things for the corporate that has to make this. Walmart had a big sale last year that was all the rage on one of the Facebook pages. Everybody was going and talking, but the big box stores have that added benefit. They can knock that price down to a ridiculously low level, where I even know that there were some other record stores going there to buy stock at that sale because it was far below the cost that we get records at. I didn't on principle, mind you, but they know that you're going to come in and get this super cheap album and walk out with a pair of socks, a package of socks or some groceries at the same time. I've often threatened to start carrying, Radio Wasteland color variant underwear just to give them some competition, but I haven't gotten around to that yet.
Well, yes, they definitely, it doesn't hurt them when they have to give that away, whatever the price is. And I have been to record stores and I have seen those albums and they're marked up substantially, like even the Metallicas and stuff. It's like, wow, that's how much you want for them. They're sealed, Walmart exclusive right on it, or Target exclusive.
Each to their own in that case.
Yep. It's a business.
Whether or not the price of vinyl is coming down, I think, is kind of it's a relative question. I think it depends on a great deal of many things. Who the artist is, what the album is it a staple? Is it new? Something risky? Something safe? And I guess it just bears watching.
Yeah, it does. And it'll be interesting to see as it goes. But I think to the patient person, if you're patient, you will be able to find big deals, especially on some, with the newer releases, or even some of this real expensive high-end stuff, because with so many people doing it, be patient. And chances are you can get some of that at a good price, down the road. And
like we said at the start, if you can save that much money on buying a record, that means you can buy more.
Yeah. And I'm proof to that.
This is the wrong week to talk to you about that.
Oh, my God.
All right, folks. Well, we thank you very much for tuning in to this episode of Two Guys Talking About Records of Vinyl Community Podcast. As always, we tremendously appreciate you listening. I think it's still growing little bits here and there on that whole Spotify thing. This digital platform may take off.
That's very good. You know what? We're going to, pretty soon, there's going to be several hundred of you, so we're excited about
There we go. All right, folks. Well, thank you again for listening. We will talk to you next week. Until then, I've been Jim, a record store owner.
And I'm Steve, a record collector.
You folks have a great one. Thanks.
Bye.